So rats have to be probably my least favorite part about living in New York City. Like when I first moved to New York City, I was absolutely terrified of rats to the point where like I would like look out for signs of how to find rats. So like I could literally walk down a street and kind of had a sense of where a rat was and when it was going to come out. I swear I developed a sixth sense for rats that I'm not really proud of because it's absolutely disgusting. Where are you going to find rats most of the time? Rats typically come out late at night. However, you will see them throughout the day in some neighborhoods over others, but for the most part, they're going to come out at night. Now, the later it is at night, the more rats you're going to see. Trust me, if you're out in New York City past 1 a.m., you are 1000% going to see rats all over the street because that is prime time for rats. In Midtown East specifically, there's definitely less rats here than the comparison of Midtown West. Midtown West 100% has more rats because there's a lot more traffic going through Midtown West. And when I say traffic, I mean like foot traffic. Like there's a lot more people just going through Midtown West. You have Times Square, the theater district, just more like attractions in general than Midtown East. So I typically see a lot more rats in Midtown West, but also New York City has this thing called a rat map that they release every year. It's disgusting, I know, but it gives you a report about where rats tend to be located, and they base this off of like the rat trap things and the activity that they see coming through those rat traps. So if you look at Midtown East versus Midtown West on that rat map, you will see that there is a lot more traction of rats in Midtown West versus Midtown East. And there are also way less rats in Midtown East compared to the Upper East Side or Lower East Side. Both of those neighborhoods are going to have way more rats, to be honest with you. You tend to find rats either near water, near parks, or on streets where there's a ton of scraps of food or easy access to food, right? Those are going to be the main spots that you're going to find rats. And Midtown East, compared to other neighborhoods, doesn't have as much of that. So that also could be why Midtown East doesn't have as much rats as other neighborhoods. Midtown East tends to be pretty clean on the streets. You don't see a lot of like food garbage everywhere. And there is water, but it's all the way pushed over to the waterfront. So it's not like huge waterfront neighborhood, especially if you're pushed more in towards Midtown East. And there are also small parks in Midtown East, but there's not like big parks like Upper East Side is right next to Central Park, which also could be a reason. And the Lower East Side has a lot of also little parks as well, and also a lot of food sources in the Lower East Side. So these are all things that are going to affect the amount of rat traffic that you get in a neighborhood. Overall, you're going to see rats in every single New York City neighborhood, except Roosevelt Island. If you know where Roosevelt Island is, it's an island in Manhattan, but off of Manhattan, there's no rat activity there. So that's interesting. I would say in Midtown East, you're not going to see a ton of them on the streets compared to other neighborhoods. So if you're petrified of rats, kind of like I am, Midtown East is probably a better option for you to live in because you're not going to see them as much there. So I will also link up the rat map in like somewhere in this video, so that way you can see it as well and see what the latest rat info is. Now, New York City releases this map or updates it, I believe, once a year. So there's a couple different like websites that kind of do like stories about it too. So you might see some like press or something come out about it. Kind of interesting. And I do have to say, every year I kind of keep up with it because I'm like interested to see the patterns. Because of like the past couple years, rat activity has been an all-time high in New York City. But honestly, I would say that 2022 is definitely much better in New York City than 2021 was. That was like the all-time worst in my experience with rat activity that I would be seeing in New York City, like everywhere I went. 2022 was not nearly as bad as 2021. So hopefully in 2023 and beyond, it starts to get better because I know that it's been pretty out of control in New York City. So they've had to take like a pretty strong hold in trying to figure out and solve this problem. But another fun fact that I think is interesting for you guys, a little unrelated to Midtown East, is that do you know that New York City is actually not the #1 city for rats in the world? Isn't that interesting? So Chicago, as of the time of this video, is actually #1. Very surprised by that. I don't really know anything about Chicago, so maybe someone in the comments can share some insight on that. But I just found that very, very interesting. I think there's also times where LA has kind of like taken the spot as well, which I'm still surprised by both of them because I really thought that from seeing them in New York City so often, I'm like, how can this not be #1? That's terrifying. Overall, Midtown East isn't the worst neighborhood for rats. So if you do live in Midtown East, that's great. If you guys have any crazy stories about rats to share, please share them in the comments, but try not to like gross people out too much because this isn't the most fun topic in the world to talk about. But as always, I love hearing from you guys.